A young girl named Zaya lived in a small village on the edge of a vast and mysterious forest. She had always been different from the others, often feeling out of place among her own people. Her mother had passed away when she was just a child, and her father, burdened by grief, had remarried. Zaya's stepmother never accepted her, treating her as an outsider in her own home. One day, after an argument with her stepmother, Zaya was accused of something she didn't do. Her father, influenced by his new wife's words, decided to send her away. Heartbroken and betrayed, Zaya was forced to leave the village and was taken deep into the forest, where she was abandoned with nothing but the clothes on her back. At first, she called out for help, hoping someone would come back for her. But the deeper the night fell, the more she realized she was truly alone. The towering trees loomed over her, their twisted branches forming eerie shapes in the dark. Strange noises echoed in the distance, rustling leaves, distant howls, and whispers carried by the wind. Fear gripped her chest as she stumbled through the dense forest, searching for a path that might lead her home. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch toward her like unseen hands. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, and exhaustion threatened to take over, but she knew she couldn't stop. She had to find a way out. As she wandered deeper, she felt as though the forest itself was watching her. Every time she tried to turn back, the trees seemed to shift, blocking her way. Panic set in, and she ran, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Her foot caught on a root, sending her tumbling to the ground. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. She couldn't give up, not yet. Just as she was about to lose hope, a sudden gust of wind brushed against her face, gentle yet firm, as if urging her to move in a certain direction. It was unlike any wind she had felt before. It carried a whisper, a voice she couldn't quite understand, but one that seemed to be calling her forward. Zaya took a deep breath and stood up. If the forest wanted her lost, then why did the wind seem to guide her? Clutching her arms around herself for warmth, she decided to follow the unseen force, unaware that it was leading her towards something extraordinary. As Zaya moved deeper into the forest, a strange stillness settled around her. The usual sounds of nature, chirping birds, rustling leaves, and distant animal calls, had disappeared, leaving behind an eerie silence. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, watching her every move. A shiver ran down her spine as she noticed the trees growing denser, their twisted trunks stretching toward the sky like grasping hands. Their bark was rough, scarred with markings that didn't look natural. Strange symbols, carved deep into the wood, glowed faintly under the moonlight. She traced one with her fingers, feeling an odd warmth beneath her touch. Then, the silence was broken. A distant whisper floated through the trees. Not from a person, but from something unseen. It wasn't the wind this time. The sound was layered, as if 100 voices spoke at once, too low for her to understand. She turned quickly, scanning the darkness, but saw nothing. Her heart pounded as she walked faster, every instinct telling her she wasn't alone. Twigs snapped behind her, but when she spun around, there was no one there. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, but whenever she turned to look, they melted into the trees. She tried to shake off her fear, reminding herself of the stories the village elders used to tell. They often warned children never to wander into the deep forest, speaking of a hidden kingdom buried within. According to legend, long ago, a powerful kingdom had thrived beyond the trees, ruled by a wise and just queen. But one day, a terrible curse had fallen upon the land, shrouding it in secrecy. It was said that only those chosen by the wind could find their way in, or out. Zaya had never believed those tales, dismissing them as bedtime stories meant to scare children. But now, standing alone in the middle of this haunting wilderness, she wasn't so sure. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to steady her breathing. She had to keep moving. But as she took a step forward, something shifted in the trees ahead. A figure, No, it was the wind again, swirling through the leaves, forming patterns in the dirt at her feet. She crouched down, her eyes widening as she recognized the same strange symbols she had seen on the trees. It was as if the forest was speaking to her, guiding her somewhere. But where and why? A part of her wanted to run in the opposite direction, escape while she still could. But another part, a deeper part, burned with curiosity. If the legends were true, if there really was a hidden kingdom, then maybe she wasn't lost after all. Summoning her courage, Zaya took a deep breath and followed the whispers in the wind, stepping further into the unknown. A sudden gust of wind wrapped around Zaya like an invisible hand, pulling at her clothes and hair. It wasn't a random breeze. This wind carried purpose, guiding her forward. The whispers grew louder, no longer distant murmurs, but voices speaking in a language she didn't understand. They wove through the trees like a song, gentle yet insistent. Zaya hesitated. Every instinct told her to be afraid, to turn back, but something deep inside her stirred, a feeling she couldn't quite name. Trusting her gut, she took a cautious step in the direction the wind pushed her. As she moved, the air grew warmer, almost comforting, as if the forest itself was acknowledging her presence. After walking for what felt like hours, she stumbled upon a small clearing, bathed in silver moonlight. At its center stood a massive tree, unlike any she had ever seen. Its bark shimmered faintly, and its twisting branches were adorned with glowing leaves that pulsed like tiny stars. The air around it felt charged, alive. Before she could take another step, a low growl echoed through the clearing. Zaya's breath caught in her throat as a pair of glowing golden eyes emerged from the darkness. A creature, large and wolf-like, but with fur that shimmered like the night sky, stepped into view. Its movements were slow, deliberate, as if it had been waiting for her. Zaya tensed, ready to run, but the wind picked up again, swirling around the creature and then around her, as if connecting them. Instead of attacking, the wolf-like being tilted its head, studying her. Then, to her astonishment, it spoke, not with words, but with a voice that echoed inside her mind. "You have been chosen." Zaya's heart pounded. Chosen for what? She whispered, unsure if she had actually heard the voice, or if her fear was playing tricks on her. The creature took a step closer, and beneath its paws the ground glowed faintly, forming the same strange symbols she had seen on the trees. The whispers in the wind grew more intense, wrapping around her like a song she almost, but not quite, understood. "You stand at the edge of two worlds," the voice in her mind continued. "One of shadow, one of light. The wind has led you here for a reason." Zaya swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had always felt different, like she didn't belong in her village. Now, standing before this creature, with the wind itself guiding her, she wondered if this was where she was meant to be all along. The wolf-like being turned, walking toward the great tree. The air shimmered where it stepped, as if the very fabric of the world was bending around it. It paused and looked back at her. "Follow, if you wish to see the truth." Zaya clenched her fists, took a deep breath, and stepped forward, into the unknown. As Zaya followed the wolf-like creature deeper into the forest, the air around her began to change. The trees stretched taller, their trunks twisting into impossible shapes. The whispers in the wind turned into echoes, voices overlapping in an endless, indecipherable murmur. The ground beneath her feet felt less solid, as though she were walking on the edge of a dream. Then, without warning, the creature vanished. Zaya spun around, her breath quickening. "Wait, where did you go?" she called, but her voice sounded muffled, as if swallowed by the thick air. The trees around her shifted, their branches bending unnaturally. The path she had been walking on was gone. In its place stood 3 different trails, each winding into the unknown. The wind whispered again, but this time it did not guide her. It merely watched. A test. Zaya exhaled, steadying herself. She had no choice but to choose. The first path was shrouded in mist, the second lined with glowing blue flowers, and the third was dark, its end hidden in shadows. Her instincts pulled her toward the second, its soft light calling to her. She stepped forward. The moment her foot touched the ground, the scenery changed. She was no longer in the forest but standing in the middle of her village. Her father stood before her, his expression unreadable. Beside him was her stepmother, arms crossed, eyes cold. "Why did you leave us, Zaya?" Her father's voice was gentle, but there was something strange about it. "You abandoned your home." Zaya's heart clenched. "No," she whispered. "You left me." Her stepmother's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Come back," she said, reaching out a hand. "You don't belong here. You never did." Doubt crept into Zaya's mind. Was this real? Had she imagined the wolf, the whispers, the glowing tree? Maybe she had just run away, and now she was lost in her own mind. Maybe. A sudden gust of wind swept through the vision, making the figures flicker like candle flames. The illusion broke apart, revealing the forest once more. The trees seemed to sigh, as if disappointed that she had seen through the trick. "You doubt, but you do not waver," a deep voice rumbled. Zaya turned to see a figure emerging from the mist. It was tall, draped in a cloak woven from the night sky itself, stars twinkling within the fabric. Its face was obscured, but glowing silver eyes watched her closely. "You have passed the first trial," the figure said. "But courage is more than seeing through lies. It is facing truth." With a wave of its hand, the ground beneath Zaya shifted. She stumbled but caught herself. The sky above darkened, and suddenly she was standing on the edge of a massive chasm. At the bottom, something shimmered, a golden key resting on a stone pedestal. A narrow bridge of crumbling rocks led down to it. "The key unlocks the path ahead," the guardian said. "Retrieve it, and you may continue." Zaya swallowed. The rocks were unstable, and one wrong step would send her plunging into the unknown. But she had come too far to turn back now. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. The rocks wobbled beneath her feet, but she moved carefully, one step at a time. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, but she refused to look down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she reached the key. As soon as her fingers wrapped around it, the wind roared, and the world around her shattered like glass. She was back in the forest, standing before the guardian. "You have proven your bravery," it said. "Now, you may enter the hidden kingdom." The wind howled once more, and a door appeared in the trees, its frame glowing with ancient symbols. Zaya held the key tightly, her heart steady. It was time to uncover the truth. As Zaya stood before the glowing door, the key in her trembling hand, the wind stirred once more, stronger, more insistent. It swirled around her, rustling the leaves and sending a wave of energy through the air. The guardian who had tested her was gone, leaving her alone in the silent forest. She hesitated. Beyond this door lay the unknown. A world she could not predict, one that could either welcome her or consume her entirely. She had already seen illusions, faced doubts, and walked a path that twisted reality itself. But something deep inside her urged her forward. Taking a steadying breath, Zaya stepped toward the door and pressed the key into its center. The moment it clicked into place, the symbols on the frame flared with golden light. The door didn't swing open, it simply dissolved, unraveling into ribbons of mist that curled into the air and vanished. Then the wind changed. It wasn't just a breeze anymore, it was alive, rushing past her like an invisible river. It pushed aside the thick undergrowth of the forest, revealing a narrow, winding path that had not been there before. The trees ahead were different. They shimmered in hues of silver and deep blue, their leaves pulsing like quiet stars. The ground beneath the path glowed faintly, marking the way forward. Zaya swallowed hard. This was it, the moment of no return. She stepped onto the path. Instantly, the world around her shifted. The air grew thick with warmth, carrying the scent of something ancient yet familiar. The whispers in the wind grew clearer, almost like distant voices calling her name. With each step, the ordinary forest faded behind her. The sky above darkened, but not with night. Stars bloomed across it, forming constellations she had never seen before. The trees stretched impossibly high, their branches forming glowing archways that pulsed with unseen energy. The deeper she went, the lighter she felt, as if she were shedding the weight of the world she had always known. Her fears, her doubts, her loneliness. They did not disappear, but they no longer controlled her. Ahead, a great mist stretched across the path, swirling and shifting like a living thing. It was the final barrier between her and whatever lay beyond. The wind howled around her, almost as if asking her one last time. "Are you ready?" Zaya took a deep breath, and then, without looking back, she stepped into the mist. The moment she did, the ground beneath her vanished, and she was weightless, floating in a void of shimmering gold. It wasn't emptiness. It was something new, something waiting to be formed. And just as panic threatened to take hold, the wind wrapped around her once more, guiding her down. When her feet touched the ground again, she opened her eyes. She was no longer in the forest. She had arrived in the hidden kingdom. As the mist cleared around Zaya, she stepped forward cautiously, her breath catching in her throat. Before her stretched a kingdom unlike anything she had ever imagined. The sky shimmered with hues of violet and gold, twin suns casting a soft glow over a land that pulsed with life. Towering spires of crystal rose from the earth, their surfaces reflecting swirling galaxies within. Rivers of liquid silver wound through lush fields of luminous flowers, their petals shifting colors as if responding to an unseen melody. She turned in awe, trying to take in every detail. The trees here were different from those in the ordinary world, tall and ancient, with leaves like shards of glass that caught the light and refracted it in dazzling patterns. Small, glowing creatures flitted through the branches, their laughter echoing like wind chimes. Then she saw them, the inhabitants of the hidden kingdom. They emerged from the trees and the silver rivers, moving gracefully, their eyes filled with curiosity. Some had skin like polished marble, others shimmered with iridescent hues. Some bore wings of gossamer light, while others walked barefoot on the air itself. They watched Zaya with expressions of both wonder and caution, whispering among themselves. A figure stepped forward, taller than the rest, draped in robes that seemed woven from the night sky itself. Their presence commanded silence, and the whispers died away. Their eyes, glowing silver like the guardian she had met before, locked onto Zaya's. "You have come far," the figure said, their voice smooth, yet weighted with something heavy, something sorrowful. "The wind has chosen you, but do you know why?" Zaya swallowed, unsure of what to say. I don't know. I was lost, and the wind led me here." A murmur spread through the crowd. The figure studied her for a long moment before nodding. "This kingdom is not as it seems," they continued. "It was once a place of harmony, a sanctuary hidden from the greed of the outside world. But a great darkness has taken root here, threatening to unravel the very magic that sustains us." Zaya's heart pounded. "A darkness?" The figure's expression darkened. "It seeks to consume what remains of our world, and we have been unable to stop it. The wind has brought you here for a reason, child. Perhaps you are the one who can change our fate." The weight of the words settled over Zaya like a heavy cloak. She had spent her whole life feeling like she didn't belong, like she had no purpose. And now, standing in this impossible kingdom, she was being told that she had been chosen for something greater than she could have ever imagined. She didn't know if she was ready, but the wind had guided her here for a reason. Taking a deep breath, she lifted her chin. "Tell me what I need to do." The figure's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Then your journey truly begins." The air in the hidden kingdom grew heavy as Zaya listened to the figure's words. The wind, once her quiet guide, now howled softly in the distance, carrying whispers of something ancient and broken. The kingdom is cursed, the figure explained, their silver eyes reflecting the flickering light of the twin suns. Trapped between time and space, neither fully alive nor fully lost. Zaya frowned, glancing around. The kingdom looked alive. Its rivers shimmered, its trees glowed, and its people moved with grace. But now that she was paying attention, she could feel it. The way the air trembled, the way the sky flickered, as if it were holding itself together by sheer will. The way the people, despite their beauty, carried a quiet sadness in their eyes. "What happened?" she asked. The figure gestured toward the sky. "Long ago, we thrived in harmony with the wind spirits, the keepers of balance. But one among us sought power beyond the laws of this realm. A sorcerer, once beloved, tried to control the wind itself, to harness its whispers and bend them to his will." Zaya shivered as the wind picked up, as if reacting to the words. "He failed," the figure continued, "and in his failure, he tore the fabric of our world. The kingdom was thrown into the space between time, neither able to move forward nor return to what it once was." Zaya's fingers curled into her palms. "So why am I here?" The wind swirled around her, wrapping her in warmth, as if answering before the figure could. "You are the only one who can break the curse," they said. "The wind spirits chose you. They led you through the trials, showed you the path, and now you must finish what was started long ago." Zaya felt her chest tighten. "But how? I don't have magic. I don't even know why the wind chose me." The figure studied her, then raised a hand. A gust of wind responded instantly, swirling around Zaya before forming into glowing symbols in the air, the same ones she had seen on the trees, the ground, and the hidden door. "You do not yet understand," they said, "but the wind has always been a part of you. You hear its whispers when others hear only silence. You follow its call when others would turn back." Zaya's mind reeled. She had always felt different, drawn to places others feared. She had never understood why she felt the wind guiding her, speaking to her in ways she couldn't explain. And now, standing in this strange, broken kingdom, it all made sense. "To break the curse," the figure said, stepping closer, "you must find the sorcerer's remnants, the fragments of his lost power scattered across the kingdom. Only by returning them to the wind spirits can the balance be restored." Zaya swallowed hard. She had thought she was simply lost, but now she had been given a purpose, one that terrified her. But deep down, she knew she couldn't turn back now. "Where do I start?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. The figure smiled for the first time. "The wind will show you." The air around Zaya thickened, humming with unseen energy as she stood at the threshold of the final challenge. The wind, once a gentle whisper, now roared around her like a storm, tugging at her clothes and hair. The sky above flickered, one moment filled with the golden glow of the twin suns, the next shrouded in unnatural darkness. The hidden kingdom was unraveling. She had traveled far, unlocking the secrets of this realm, retrieving the lost fragments of the sorcerer's power, and proving herself in trials she never could have imagined. But now, standing before the heart of the curse, she felt the weight of everything pressing down on her. At the center of a massive clearing stood an ancient ruin, a crumbling temple carved from stone that shimmered with shifting symbols. At its center, bound in glowing chains of wind and shadow, was the final fragment of power. The moment she stepped forward, the ground trembled. A figure emerged from the temple's darkness, a shadow given form, its presence pressing against her like an invisible force. Its eyes glowed with the same silver light she had seen in the kingdom's people, but instead of warmth, they burned with rage. "You should not be here," it spoke, its voice layered with echoes, as if many souls spoke through it. You seek to undo what has been sealed. You do not understand the cost. Zaya clenched her fists. The wind brought me here for a reason. I won't leave without breaking this curse. The shadow's form twisted, growing taller, darker, until it loomed over her like a living nightmare. Then you will suffer as I did. Without warning, it struck. A wave of darkness rushed toward her, faster than she could react. Zaya barely had time to raise her arms before it crashed into her, sending her flying backward. Pain exploded through her body as she hit the ground, the force stealing her breath. The wind howled, circling around her protectively, but the darkness pushed against it, struggling to consume everything. Zaya forced herself to stand. She had come too far to lose now. Closing her eyes, she focused on the wind, the one thing that had always guided her, protected her. She didn't know how, but she knew she had to trust it. And then, something clicked. She wasn't just chosen by the wind. She was a part of it. A memory surfaced, faint but undeniable. As a child, she had always felt the wind's presence, heard its whispers when no one else did. She had thought it was just her imagination, but now she understood. She was not just an outsider brought to this kingdom. She was a descendant of the wind spirits. The realization sent a surge of energy through her. She opened her eyes, and for the first time, she didn't just hear the wind, she commanded it. Lifting her hands, she let the storm within her rise. The wind responded instantly, gathering around her, lifting her from the ground. The darkness lashed out again, but this time it did not touch her. She moved with the wind, striking forward with a force that sent the shadow recoiling. The chains around the final fragment of power trembled, then shattered. A blinding light exploded outward, engulfing the kingdom. The wind roared in triumph, sweeping through the land, clearing the curse that had bound it for so long. The shadow let out one final anguished cry before dissolving into nothing. And just like that, the kingdom was free. As the light faded, Zaya fell to her knees, exhausted but victorious. The kingdom's people emerged from the trees, their eyes wide with wonder and gratitude. The figure who had guided her before stepped forward, kneeling beside her. "You have done what no one else could," they said softly. "You have restored the balance." Zaya looked up, the wind brushing gently against her face. She had thought she was just a lost girl in the forest, but now she knew the truth. She had found where she truly belonged. As the golden light of the kingdom settled, Zaya stood amidst the quiet hum of renewal. The air, once thick with the weight of an ancient curse, now shimmered with warmth. The twin suns hung still in the sky, their radiance steady, as if the world itself had drawn a deep, peaceful breath. The people of the hidden kingdom stepped forward, their faces alight with wonder. Where there had been sorrow in their eyes, there was now hope. The wind spirits, unseen but always present, danced in invisible currents around them, whispering their approval. Zaya felt different, lighter, stronger. The storm that had once been only a whisper inside her now pulsed with life, a part of her she could never ignore again. She had come into this world as a lost girl, searching for a way out of the forest. But now she stood as something more. "You have done what no one else could," the kingdom's elder said, stepping forward. "You have freed us. The curse is broken. The balance has returned." A soft murmur of gratitude spread through the crowd. Some bowed, some simply gazed at her in awe. But Zaya felt no pride, only a quiet understanding. She had not saved the kingdom alone. The wind had chosen her, guided her, and in doing so, revealed her true self. She turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the boundary between this world and her own shimmered faintly. A choice lay before her. "Will you stay?" the elder asked, studying her closely. Zaya hesitated. She had no home to return to, no family waiting for her. The world she had come from had never truly felt like hers. And yet, could she leave it behind forever? The wind curled around her, gentle this time, as if waiting for her answer. She thought of the journey she had taken, the trials, the pain, the moments of fear. She thought of the first time she had truly listened to the wind, let it guide her without doubt. And now, standing at the edge of a world reborn, she knew what she had to do. She turned to the elder, a small smile forming. "I don't think I can stay," she said, her voice steady. "There's a world out there that needs me too. People who need to hear the wind's whispers, even if they don't know it yet." The elder nodded, as if they had expected this. "Then go with our blessing. The wind will always be with you." A soft breeze wrapped around her one last time, and as she stepped toward the edge of the kingdom, the world around her began to shift. The glowing trees faded, the silver rivers dissolved into mist, and the ground beneath her gave way to something familiar. Soft earth, rustling leaves, the scent of the ordinary forest. And then, she was back. The ancient woods stretched before her, unchanged. But she was not the same girl who had wandered into them. She closed her eyes, feeling the wind against her skin. She could hear it clearer than ever now, not just as a whisper, but as a voice, a guide, a calling. She smiled. She was no longer lost. She had found her destiny.